So it's been a year since my last video, and there is an explanation for that. So before we move on to the main course, let me tell you all a short story. Last year, when I was working on the first version of this video, I randomly noticed that my computer would not update for the life of itself. I tried every single solution I could find on Google, but to no avail. This shit just corrupted itself. So I go to my local micro center and throw money at them and just say, yo, fix it. I don't care if you have to do a clean install of Windows or delete my data. Just, don't delete this hard drive. I get my computer after a week and, yeah, they touched that hard drive. I lost the progress that I had on that video. All my footage gone. All my gameplay gone. All my funny little images gone. All my homework gone. In my depression, I sort of just gave up on doing the video and got addicted to Final Fantasy XIV. Slowly, all my motivation to pick up this video kind of got erased until more recently. I've climbed out of that rut and sort of decided to start again. And that's kind of where we are right now. Last time that you and I spoke together, I sort of discussed how Sonic Adventure 1 was a great 3D Sonic game, a great start for the blue blurs beginning into the 3D space. Now, this time, I will discuss with you why Sonic Adventure 2 is an amazing example of how to do a sequel and how to build upon the foundations of a previous game, but also how it's an example of how fine-tuning things a little too much ends up making the game suffering in the long run. In Sonic Adventure 1, we had 6 playable characters: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, E102 Gamma, and Big the Cat. While having 6 different playable characters seems amazing, it did kind of bloat the game. Sonic, Tails, and Amy all had the same playstyle. Gamma also had a similar playstyle as the previous 3, but he had an added benefit of the fancy gimmick of having to beat the stage within a time limit. And Knuckles had a completely brand new gameplay style brought to the Sonic series. And lastly, Big the Cat was just a demo of Sega bass fishing. So when tasked with making the sequel to Sonic Adventure, Sonic Team decided that they wanted to take the more unique gameplay aspects of the previous game and sort of expand on them and make them more fleshed out. And the 3 gameplay styles that they decided to take with is the classic Sonic stages, the classic Speed stages, the Gamma gameplay style, and lastly, the treasure hunting style. Now, how did they flesh it out a little bit more? Well, for Sonic's gameplay, they would put a bigger emphasis on speed and keeping up that speed as you traverse through the level. For Knuckles' gameplay, they would expand heavily on the hunting aspect of the treasure hunting gameplay. And lastly, for Gamma's gameplay, they would expand upon it by increasing the action set pieces in this gameplay style instead of making you just run forward and shoot. With the gameplay styles now fleshed out, we get to look at how they better develop the stages. In Sonic Adventure 1, all the characters had to share the 11 stages that were in the game. This led to these stages feeling all over the place because they needed to have areas where Sonic could speed through, areas spacious enough for emeralds to be hidden when you play as Knuckles, and filled to the brim with enemies that you can shoot with Gamma, and every so often have like a dedicated area with water so Big can fish in it. While interesting to see how they kind of incorporated multiple gameplay styles into developing a stage, it made it kind of boring because whenever you completed one playthrough, like you completed Sonic's story and then you go on to Knuckles' story, you're not gonna really experience different stages, just a different part of a stage. And sometimes even in that part, you don't really get to experience a different part of a stage. Is sometimes you're just locked into one specific set piece area of a stage. Or heaven forbid, like Tails. Tails gets his stages cut in half. Sonic has a long stage, right? And then Tails gets it cut to make it shorter for him. This makes repeat playthroughs really boring because not only are you going through the same stages over and over and over again, but sometimes you're not really experiencing anything different. But with Sonic Adventure 2, all 20 plus stages were built around the gameplay styles to help complement them and makes going through the story a much more enjoyable experience. For instance, Sonic Speed stages are built around getting a lot of speed through some very exhilarating set pieces, but are also filled to the brim with obstacles that are meant to slow you down. Yet, those very same obstacles could be used to keep the speed going if you know what you're doing. Knuckles' treasure hunting stages are built around these huge arenas that are meant for you to just get lost and hunt down these emeralds, and the shooting stages, while still similar to the speed stages in a way, are instead filled to the brim with with enemies for the players to destroy and some light puzzle aspects for you to just tickle your brain a little bit. Now, while all those things that I did mention are a good thing, Sonic Team did overtune the levels a little bit too much. For instance, speed stages start similar to the Sonic Adventure 1 stages with their open level design, but then they slowly start devolving into hallway levels. The first 3 stages of Sonic's story, City Escape, Metal Harbor, and Green Forest, all have some kind of alternate route or a big expansive area where taking a different route will lead to extra goodies or a better rank, or sometimes the level just has stuff hiding around in them. A key example for me is in Green Forest, where there is a area in the game where there are multiple platforms that are crumbling and falling down, that you have all these different paths to take, and because the level is falling down, it's crumbling down, you're forced to make a very quick decision. And depending on your reflexes, you can get some very nice goodies and hell, even skip portions of the level. But in the later stages, for the speed characters at least, they sort of devolve into these hold forward to win stages. Now, while these may be exhilarating, they are kind of mindless and just a spectacle. Some of them are my favorite, such as Final Rush, or better yet, the 2 final stages. I kind of dread them on repeat playthroughs, such as Skyrail and Pyramid Cave, because these stages are just hold forward, don't think, get to the very end. Treasure hunting stages begin at a decent size that allows for exploration without getting lost. These stages, like Wild Canyon and Aquatic Mine and Dry Lagoon, are the perfect size because you can just barely be out of the range for a emerald and still be able to find where you are. Hell, I would even say it's like going on a small Easter egg hunt at the park, where you know where the eggs are, or you have a general idea of where they could be, but you have to slightly go out of your way, and when you finally find an egg, finding the next one is not too hard. Such as the pyramid levels for both Knuckles and Rouge and the space stages for Knuckles and Rouge, it feels like you take the wrong step and you're just fucking lost, and you need a tour guide in order to just find your way back to where you originally were. And lastly, the mech stages. Okay, well, they did a pretty good job with the mech stages throughout the whole playthrough of the adventures. My only complaint would be that there isn't much going on in these stages. It's very much hold forward and shoot, head empty kind of gameplay. That has nothing to do with stages, it's more of a gameplay thing, and I'm gonna go into detail about that a little bit right now. But they are filled to the brim with some very exhilarating, like, blood pumping action that would blow a 10-year-old kid's mind as they go through these games. Now that we discussed the issues that I have with the stages, how would I fix it? Well, personally, I would make it so that the speed stages have multiple routes. I'm a big kicker of that when it comes to Sonic games. They can all maintain linear design, but they should have multiple sections that would allow you to swap different routes depending on your reaction and your speed and just quick decision making, similar to how it is in Sonic Generations. For treasure hunting stages, I would simply remove the hint boxes entirely from these stages. The little TV boxes are a blessing to have in these stages, and they are very much needed because without them you would get lost, but they're also a big hindrance. They give cryptic messages to where the emeralds are, such as left side of the right side of the moon, which leads to more confusion than actual help. So what would I do? Well, I would kind of implement the hint system that they have in Sonic Adventure 1, where you would have Tikal sort of just guide you to the direction of where the emerald is. Instead of Tikal, because she's a ghost and she's gone, we could have Omochao do it. Or because Omochao isn't really lore-wise connected with the emeralds, you could have Omochao take you to the general direction of where the emerald is. Or after a certain number of uses, Omochao would sort of transform or sort of become the TV boxes where he will tell you the hint, the cryptic hint, once you are close enough to the emerald. And lastly, for the mech stages, I would add some puzzle aspects to them so that the player doesn't really have to deal with the brain-dead gameplay of these stages. Control is also something that Sega Team kind of messed with when making this game. The characters are kind of jerky and move around depending on how you flick the wrist. When you're moving at top speed, a simple tap of the left stick will have your character just jerk off in that direction. Now, while this is only a problem for Sonic and Shadow, who are constantly moving at high speeds and can easily get to their top speed, I still believe that this is an issue for all the other characters. Let's compare this to Sonic Adventure 1, where all the characters sort of lean into their turns and control much better. This is kind of an ongoing issue with 3D Sonic games, and it will be something that we will go into much more bigger detail in the future. Graphics are another thing that Sonic Team improved when making this sequel. When you look at all the characters in Sonic Adventure 1, they all look pudgy and round, similar to their 2D sprites, which was great for a first venture into the 3D world, but for Sonic Adventure 2, it seems like they wanted to go with models that more closely resemble the artwork that was around at the time. Long quills, noodle limbs, and just an overall taller Sonic. This also leads to the characters looking like they've aged and some time has passed since the first game. The better models also leads to cutscenes looking better too. And in my opinion, I think the characters animate a lot better than what they did in Sonic Adventure 1. I also read that in certain cutscenes, the characters were motion captured, which leads to, hell, some really nice cutscenes, but really awkward in others. Like one of the ones that comes into my mind is when Amy is like, "Have no fear, Amy Rose is here." I think this is an improvement from how they made the cutscenes in the previous game, because in the previous game, it kind of looked like they just used the characters' models from in the game, and then they just had like the anime mouth button and just blah 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 blah. Meanwhile, with Sonic Adventure 2, these are all custom animations for these cutscenes. The next thing I want to touch base on is basically the characters and their voice acting in Sonic Adventure 2. A lot of the voice actors reprised their roles from SA1 into SA2, and I think that's great because that allows the actors to get more comfortable with their characters and acting them. In SA1, they sounded like they were just getting used to voicing these characters and sort of giving them a voice, oftentimes leading to moments where it sounded like they were just reading from the script or just very awkward sort of voice direction. In SA2, it kind of sounds like they're finally getting used to understanding their character, finally understanding what voice they want to give them. With one of my favorite voice actors being obviously Ryan Drummond as Sonic, Scott Dreyer, I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong, as Knuckles, and newcomer David Humphrey as Shadow, I honestly think that the cast in Sonic Adventure 2 kind of really built my sort of perception of how I think Sonic characters sound. And while I do think that the cast of voice actors were really good and doing a great job as their characters, there were some hiccups along the way. Some of the deliveries in this game is just god awful, and it's no secret that the audio mixing in this game is just the worst. But I think I read somewhere online that says the reason why the audio mixing in the game was so bad is because the English audio is a lot longer than the cutscene itself than it is in Japanese. Look at a cutscene in English and then look at the same cutscene in Japanese. You'll kind of get to tell where the issues came in. But to be honest, I do think that the audio issues for some cutscenes actually strengthens them, because it's like the characters are genuinely cutting each other off. Like, would you let your arch enemy finish his monologue, or would you just... Moving on from cutscenes and graphics, Sonic Adventure 2 story mode is a huge improvement from the previous game. In Sonic Adventure 1, we had one overarching story told through 6 different character lenses, which, while ambitious, led to some rather awkward story beats where certain characters get important plot points that are important to the viewer, they mean absolutely fuck all to the character themselves. Meanwhile, in Sonic Adventure 2, we have one story told through 2 lenses, the hero story and the dark story, which leads to a much more cohesive story being told. In Sonic Adventure 2, the story revolves around Eggman seeking his grandfather's super secret research, which turns out to be Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow promises Eggman that for releasing him from the capsule, he will give him access to the ultimate weapon of destruction, the Eclipse Cannon on the Space Colony Arc. But in order to activate the Space Colony Arc, they will need the 7 Chaos Emeralds to fully power up the colony. While Shadow and Eggman are getting the emeralds, they get the attention of Rouge the Bat, a treasure hunter / government spy sent by the government to keep tabs on Eggman and the ultimate life form, Shadow the Hedgehog. Rouge agrees to help Eggman and Shadow because she's a treasure hunter and can help them find the Chaos Emeralds, leading them to form an alliance. The actions of Team Dark causes Sonic to get arrested due to them mistaking Shadow for Sonic. It's okay guys, I also need prescription glasses, leading to the heroes busting Sonic out of Alcatraz. While they are escaping, they run into Knuckles, who is looking for the pieces of the Master Emerald that got scattered around the world because Knuckles had to shatter the emerald in order to prevent Eggman from using it for evil, and this leads to Team Heroes working together to stop Team Dark and save the world. All while the mystery of Eggman's grandfather and the ultimate life form looms over both sides of the story. Yes, this is a very, very run-of-the-mill Sonic game, sort of heroes stopping Eggman story. But what I like a lot about this story is sort of how they tried to go with a little mystery aspect. Like, what is the ultimate life form? Why did the government stop Eggman's grandfather? What I really like about the story of Sonic Adventure 1 is how both sides, both Team Dark and Team Hero story, are happening at the same time simultaneously. The actions in one story affect the other story, pushing both narratives forward. Something that I think would be really beneficial, probably in a Sonic Adventure 2 remake, is having a full story mode where you would play the whole story in one giant sequential playthrough. Well, it's time to wrap this video up. Sonic Adventure 2, in my opinion, is an amazing example of how to make a sequel and build upon the foundation of the previous game. From how they took the bloated story structure of the previous games, developed stages that cater to every character's playstyle, but also an example of how to fine-tune things a little too much that the game ends up suffering. From how they took the smooth character movement from the previous game and tweaked it into a jittery experience, creating stages that started off as fun and enjoyable, that eventually became slogs, and the infamous audio mixing. Yet, I still believe Sonic Adventure 2 is one of the better 3D Sonic games, both gameplay-wise and story-wise. But let's see if that opinion changes as I go on this Sonic games review adventure. So I can't wait to see you guys next time for when we talk about my first ever Sonic game that was ever given to me and not a hand-me-down, Sonic Heroes. And hopefully next time my computer doesn't blow up and I lose all my progress. See you guys next time. Bye.